guys, it's Quana back again with another review and a recap. And this time I'm going to be talking about the new HBO Max original series, Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. Now, before we get started, I first and foremost just have to say thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed to our channel. We made it to above 500 subscribers, so thank you guys so much. It means that now we have a community tab on the page, so I can send out post alerts to let you guys know when I'm going to be dropping new content. I can send out polls to see what information or content you want me to cover, and we can just stay more connected as a community. So I'm so excited. Thank you guys for putting your trust in me to give you guys reviews and recaps that are worthwhile, and I hope you guys will really enjoy this one. So, a little bit of backstory in case you've just recently stumbled upon my channel and you've not heard me talk about Pretty Little Liars over the last 3 years. But I was a pretty big Pretty Little Liars fan. Now, I have to say, I did not get on board in 2010 when Pretty Little Liars first aired. I came on board somewhere around 2013-ish, due to the fact that my niece was watching the show. I think Netflix streaming had recently kind of really taken off, and we had Netflix streaming, and so we were able to stream the episodes. And she was watching it one weekend when she was visiting with us, and I was so enthralled. I love shows with mystery. I also love the YA genre. I never really read the books, but I was just so enthralled by this idea that not only was it a mystery, but it was a mystery that the fans would be able to guess, that you'd be able to watch along with each episode, and there'd be clues in each episode, and at the end of the season, you would get a reveal for who the big bad was of the season, and they would connect back to the clues. Now, in case you've never seen Pretty Little Liars, the original version, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis. So Pretty Little Liars was based on a YA novel by Sarah Shepard. It was adapted for ABC Family by Marlene King, and it really was a cultural phenomenon. It spawned people getting into Reddit and Tumblr, and I do have a Tumblr that is linked on the About page, and if you scroll back into the deep recesses of my Tumblr, you will see that I was pretty big into trying to hunt for clues on who A was. And so it was about these 4 girls who, after a summer party one night, their friend Allison goes missing, and these 4 friends, eventually over a year's time, kind of split apart. Well, one of the friends returns back, and this begins them being tormented by someone who's calling themselves A and knows all their deepest, darkest secrets, and is basically blackmailing them. And at the end of each season, or a couple of seasons, you're going to find out who is this person behind the hoodie that's tormenting these girls, that's spying on them, and that is haunting them. But there's also the mystery around Allison's disappearance and her death, and who did it. And there were 7 seasons of this show, and the show was really, really good. Seasons 1, 2, even 3 were pretty decent. And if you know anything about the show, I could do definitely another video about it, because I really was into the show pretty deep. But over time, through the first season is very largely focused on following the plot line of the book, and also making sure that the clues to who that season's A, which is the big bad person who is tormenting the girls, who that person is. So when you watch back over the season after you've seen the season finale, you can literally trace a lot of those clues and can see how this person was involved in everything that happened and what would make them become the big bad person. Somewhere around season 3 or 4, fans started noticing that the clues that they had been tracing and keeping notebooks on and tracking weren't really paying out to a person who was plausible. And then they did something so sinister in season 5, which was to turn their big bad into a transgender woman. And there's nothing wrong with that on its face. transgender people are capable of bad. However, there's a trope in media of making LGBTQIA plus people evil or nefarious, and so there is a little bit of problematicness with regards to that, but also just the fact that it didn't line up with any of the timeline, any of the backstory, anything that had happened. The character was too old to have gone through some of the things they had gone through to be connected to the family. It was just a whole hot mess. So sorry for that big spoiler. I'm still not saying names, so hopefully that will help you out a little bit. And then by the end of the show, you get a big bad that there was no way. There were people who guessed, but there was no way to know that person. So by the time the show ended, it was probably a bigger letdown than the Game of Thrones final season. Yeah, it was that bad. So then along the way, during season 4 or 5, there was a spinoff called Rosewood. It was supposed to be kind of like a horror genre, light anthology related series. It didn't really go anywhere. It only lasted a season, and nothing really happened in the show. And it was supposed to connect back to the major storylines, and it didn't. And it just didn't work. It was a good idea. It just didn't work. And then there was a spinoff after the show ended called Pretty Little Liars Perfectionist that was set in a college, and it brought over 2 of the cast members from the original show, and I think that one maybe lasted a season or 2. I didn't watch it. I was done by then. I was burnt out. And so some time has passed, and when HBO announced that there was going to be Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, I think that most fans like myself were really hopeful. One, unless you were really digging and you had just kind of seen the trailers and the blurbs, you might not have noticed some of the names attached to the project. And so the idea that perhaps this time around on a major network like HBO, where they would be able to have less restraint, be able to lean in a little bit more to the campier side of the show, be able to lean into more of the adult themes that the show actually addresses, I think fans like myself have been really hopeful. So let me go ahead and run down for you, in case you have not seen these first 3 episodes that HBO has already dropped at one time. And I'm not a fan of the 3 episode drop. It worked out well for me because I was able to binge all 3 episodes, but it also felt like they dropped all 3 episodes because that is when you have enough of a cliffhanger to get people wanting more. But I'm going too fast. So Pretty Little Liars Original Sin was created by Robert Aguirre Sacasa. I might have mispronounced the name. But if you don't recognize that name, he is the writer and the creator for Riverdale, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. He wrote on some episodes of Glee, and all of the Riverdale spinoffs. He is someone who, notably in the TV community, if you're not familiar with any of those shows, create shows that are really interesting in premise, have really strong first seasons, and then crash and burn spectacularly. Like, you are watching this and you cannot turn away from the chaos that it is, but you're also largely dissatisfied and you walk away. I walked away from Chilling Adventures. I walked away from Riverdale. I made it 2 seasons on Riverdale. I made 1 season on Chilling Adventures. I think my husband watched more of it. Maybe one day I'll go back to it. And now Riverdale has just completely jumped the shark and is doing too much, and I just can't. So when I saw his name attached to this, suffice it to say, I am concerned. And then when you look under the EPs, the executive producers, the very first name on the executive producer list is Marlene King. That is okay. Executive producers don't always have a say in what happens in a show. Some executive producers are just there to help secure cast. If they're going to be using big names, you might use an executive producer with a big name to help draw people in. to help raise money and funds, and if the show does well, to help market and promote the show during award season. So that does not have to be scary. And I'm someone who has a particular fondness for Marlene. I love Marlene, and I know how much the show has meant to her. But I also just need, for my sanctity of mind, to hear her say, I effed up this show. Excuse my abbreviation there. I messed up this show so bad, and it was because I was also in the Reddits and in the Tumblrs, and in trying to trick the audience because people were guessing correctly who A was, and I didn't want them to guess it. I wanted it to be a surprise instead of what the show really was, which was this really special payoff. Because if you watch most of the like murder mystery shows that are out there nowadays, there are no clues. It's literally you're going along with someone who's investigating this crime, and you don't know who it is until they know who it is. And you can't really go back and see clues because they're not planting clues. Pretty Little Liars was kind of like Marvel. It was like the MCU with all of the Easter eggs and the clues. And so it kind of felt like she took that away from us by trying to go back and change things. And even there were leaks, and the leaks end up being somewhat right but somewhat wrong, and then they changed things around, it felt like. And so it's kind of like, it's okay. It's okay if there are leaks. The hardcore people are going to find out the leaks unless they block it, those phrases on social media. It just went bad. So that is the whole backstory of Pretty Little Liars. However, finding out about Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, I was still intrigued because this time it is a slasher. So it delves in the same motifs as Pretty Little Liars. It's said to be set in the same universe as Pretty Little Liars, but it is a mystery / slasher horror film, well, television series. So I watched the first 3 episodes. I'm not going to go over all of the actors' names, but the lead girl, in my opinion, in this show is Bailey Madison, and you might recognize Bailey Madison because she played Maybelle in The Bridge to Terabithia. My favorite role by her is Young Snow. Literally missed opportunity for them to have not casted Jennifer Goodwin as her mother in this because they have the same face. She was perfect as Young Snow in Once Upon a Time because they have the same face. And then she also played Grace Russell in The Good Witch. So she's pretty big. This girl has been acting her behind off. She's got somewhere like 60 plus acting credits at her young age. So bravo to her. There's also a couple of other accomplished actors attached to this. My personal favorite person attached to this that we haven't seen much of them in the 3 episodes that they dropped is Lea Salonga, who is a Broadway actress and singer. She most notably, for most people who don't maybe follow her career much, is the singing voice of Mulan, also the singing voice of Jasmine. Adore her. She's done Les Miserables as Eponine. She's done Miss Saigon. If it's almost tragic to have her in a role where we don't get to hear her sing because the woman has a voice like an angel. So, a little bit about this show. This show is a little different in that in the original Pretty Little Liars, the parents were kind of in the peripheral. They were never there, or they were there just to kind of how their behaviors and their relationships impacted their daughters. In this show, the parents kind of have more of a presence because the person who is seemingly hunting down and tormenting the main girls in this crew are punishing them because of some failed actions or bullying done to this one character. We get a flashback in the first episode, and there is a character by the name of Angela who in the first 5 minutes at a Y2K rave commits the big S word, unaliving themselves. And seemingly these girls who are in the 2022 setting are being punished because of the actions of their mothers. All right, so that is the basic premise. And I don't feel like that's too much of a spoiler because that is literally the first 5 minutes of the show. So now, I am going to go into a little bit more of a deeper dive, not really a full recap of what happens, but there will be spoilers. So if you haven't had opportunity to watch the show, but you are intrigued, go watch it, bookmark this video, and come back and watch this video, because I'm going to be giving you my take on this and telling you guys what I thought about it. I always say, watch the first 3 episodes for yourself. Watch any show for yourself. I will probably watch this whole season based off of what I've seen so far. There is enough good stuff what I've seen so far to probably have me watching it the whole season, so I won't abandon it yet. But what I'm going to say in the second part of this video will be what remains to be seen. Whether I continue with it beyond the first season will be based off of some of the critique and criticisms I give moving forward. All right, so there's your disclaimer. But if you're ready to just get into the sauciness of it, let's just dig in. All right, so you have 5 main girls who are the ones who are being tormented by A. Let me be honest, I don't even remember their names. There's Imogen, there is Tabby, Mouse, there's Farah, and Noah. Those are their names. Oh my gosh, look at me remembering stuff. We get a very diverse cast in this show, so that part, big thumbs up. Whether or not we're going to see that diversity actually come into the show's framework and actually impact the way that the characters portray themselves on screen, that remains to be seen. But so far, it's a very diverse show. Now, if you were a fan of the original Pretty Little Liars, you see I had to lean in, right? I've got to lean in now at this part. One thing that the show has going for it is it's leaning into the horror genre instead of just the mystery genre. And it's giving tons of Easter eggs. I like the Easter eggs, except for the fact that they are a bit on the nose and too specific and direct. Now, there's a reason I think that they're doing this. This is for a younger audience. I'm not probably the ideal audience, but hey, here we are. Anyway, I'm going to watch it because I'm a horror film. Now, I've become a horror film fan recently. So those of you who've been following the channel for a little while know I've been dabbling in some horror films, even though it went a while, like 7 years without watching any. But there's tons of horror movie references, and some are just a little too on the nose and some are okay. So some spoilers. When Imogen's mother commits the unaliving, there's a reference to Stephen King's It, because when she unalives herself in a bathtub that then floods the hallway upstairs, the letter A is written in her blood. Okay, that is a direct reference to It. If you've not read It, but you've seen the movies or you've seen the original made-for-TV movie, then you'll understand that reference right away. A is in a mask instead of a hoodie, which is a direct reference to Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I miss the hoodies. I miss the hoodies because it made it feel as though this was happening amongst teenagers, and it made it relatable, not to me because I wasn't a teenager, but it made it make sense. Like it made it fit. I feel like having the Leatherface mask brings in the element of like adults doing something nefarious to these girls. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like that. There was just something special about, even though sometimes it didn't make sense in terms of from like a financial standpoint of like how A was able to accomplish all these things, it made sense, or it was enjoyable that it was contained within their community. There's a reference to Carrie, where a character wants to do a Carrie-like act at a school dance to another character. And then there's the character of Tabby, who works at the movie theater, and she just is constantly rattling off movie references from The Breakfast Club to Jordan Peele, which is a big spotlight in there. If you haven't watched my review of Nope, don't forget to check that out. And I'll also be doing a full-on breakdown as well, because I've already seen it twice. So really heavy on the horror movie references. a little too much. I wish they would streamline it down a little bit and let it have more weight. And then also, there's kind of this assumption that Tabby's character obviously knows all these references. She's a movie fanatic. She works in a movie theater. Along the way, the other girls just kind of are listening to her rattling off these references, and they're not blinking. Now, one of the things that was really cool about Pretty Little Liars is you had the character of Spencer. Spencer was the big brain of the group, and whenever she would utter a word or a book quote, because that was her big thing, was book quotes, they would kind of look at her like, girl, what the heck are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about. Like, okay, it's cool. You know Jane Austen. Like, okay. And they would kind of call her on it and say, bring it back down for the rest of us. So it's a little interesting that, to me, there's an assumption that the audience watching this knows all of these references, because they might know some of them, but they might not know enough to really get the most impact out of it. It'd be good if they just sprinkled one or two, let them linger, and let the characters maybe give a little bit of backstory about the reference, or let it sit a little while so they can connect the reference so it makes sense. But it's fun Easter eggs, you know. So far, what is really interesting and somewhat annoying to me is the whole premise that these girls are being tormented because the actions of their mothers, not because their own actions. There was always the lingering premise in Pretty Little Liars that they were being tormented because of their own actions, their own failures to stand up to their friend Allison as a bully, as she was bullying other people. And so they were caught in her web of her wrongdoings. This just feels like these girls are being unjustly punished for something that they weren't even alive to have a part in. And it really feels like that that movie Ma with Octavia Spencer, where she is kind of doing it's a similar premise. There's also, to me, which feels very much reminiscent of Pretty Little Liars, that there is a major A, and that this A must have people helping them out. And so there is the potential, I think, for perhaps it to not be a one season off, and to have like the unveiling of more A's along the way. But it's going to be really important for the writers to kind of have that mapped out now, and not throw that idea at us later without making it plausible that those other characters would have had resources. I think that was one of my problems with the Scream franchises. The first spinoff made sense, but as it continued to snowball into more franchises, sometimes the killers didn't make sense that they would really be that greatly impacted enough to want to have the motivation to continue their rampages. The first one, it did, though. So now in the first episode, you have there's twins, which is a prevalent storyline in the books originally, and they didn't really use it as much. They used it in Pretty Little Liars, but it didn't happen until later. That's a major spoiler. But in the books, it was a big plot line. Well, here they bring in twins, Kelly and Karen. Karen is a Karen, and she is Miss It girl, and she is tormenting everyone else and tormenting these girls, and they plot a plan for revenge against her, and it kind of backfires on them. So I think by them doing that, and us not, and maybe not making that a plot point for the main sequence of the show, it kind of made me not feel as much sympathy for the girls, because we really don't see Karen do a whole lot. There's one character that she has definite beef with, but for the other characters to have gotten involved with this revenge plot, it didn't really seem like she was doing a whole lot to torment them. I really would have liked to have seen her do a little bit more to be bullying them as well, so I would have more sympathy and compassion for them getting involved in the plot. Now, Karen has a twin named Kelly. Kelly is also a bit of a but she's definitely a lot nicer seemingly than Karen. So in episode 1, it just sets up the premise. We have Imogen's mom commits unaliving, and Imogen goes to stay with Tabby, and Tabby's mom was also a friend of Imogen's mom. But for some reason, even though Tabby and Imogen are friends, Tabby and Imogen didn't know that their moms were friends in high school, which is really, really weird. And there's so much information about their moms that they don't know. And then along the way, they join up kind of Breakfast Club style with Farron, Noah, and Mouse. Mouse is a very tech-savvy girl. Farron is a dancer. And Noah was a track athlete who took a rap for some drug use and now has to do community service and have an ankle monitor. So the first episode, other than Imogen's mom unaliving, not a lot happens other than the girls hatching their plan for revenge. Then in episode 2, they execute their plan for revenge, and then it results in Karen getting unalived. She doesn't unalive. They think that she unalives herself, but she doesn't. She gets unalived by A, which seems like it's an act of protecting Imogen. It's really weird how it happens. It doesn't seem like there's a reason for it happening other than maybe the fact that she was targeting Imogen. So I think that might be a clue to who A is, because it seems like they were targeting or protecting Imogen. And then in episode 3, the fallout from Karen being unalived, even though everyone else thinks that she unalived herself, is that the girls are under suspicion of having something to do with it. And then we get the mothers to come in, and they have to kind of protect and defend the girls and keep them out of trouble. But they don't fess up to anything. They don't connect the dots to anything that the girls are going through. It's really weird how all of that happens. There's also there's a side character that gets killed, and it's going to come back, I think, later on. But there's like nothing that's ever said about that. So who, as of this point, do I think A is? I don't know. However, I do suspect that Karen is not the twin that was unalived. I suspect that they had switched, Kelly and Karen, and Kelly was the one who ended up getting unalived, just because Karen has been the mastermind, it seems, and it seems like she would have kind of gotten her sister to do this and be the one to take the fall and get in trouble, take that risk in case she got caught. It doesn't seem like to me Karen would actually be the one to take the risk and risk getting caught. So I definitely think that Karen is not the one who is unalived. I think that the twins swapped roles, and now they have to, now the twin who's left, which is Kelly, but I think it's really Karen. I'm going to go back and watch it again though, because I think there's some clues, but I think that that's what's going on. I do think that it's interesting that no one found or mentioned the janitor being unalived. And A definitely looked like they had a bus line. So I can't help but wonder if Imogen, who is pregnant, if somehow she wasn't her mother's daughter and A is protecting her. At the same time that they are going to be punishing everyone else. It's a little interesting. I don't know. I did enjoy the show. It's got good bones. It's got good bones. Again, it's just something about the fact that the girls are being punished for something that they didn't do that, oh my gosh, I'm going to cracking my knuckles on camera. Sorry guys. That it bothers me a little bit. But so far the show is really interesting. It is really fun watching everything go down. I do not like the 3-episode drop because it really felt like it wasn't enough of a cliffhanger. I think they could have stopped at episode 2. I feel like episode 2 ended with enough of a cliffhanger that people would come back for episode 3. So I would have done a 2-episode drop instead of a 3-episode drop. It just felt like maybe they were doing that because the pacing of episode 1 was so slow. Episode 1 is slow. So I'm going to warn you of that now if you stayed with this video. Episode 1 is slow, so you're going to have to push through it in order to get to episode 2. And then nothing really happens major until you get to the end of episode 2. Alright guys, so those are my thoughts on Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, and this video ended up being longer than I intended, but hopefully you stayed with it and you enjoyed it and you enjoyed hearing me talk about Pretty Little Liars. And if you are interested in me talking about Pretty Little Liars some more, then let me know down below in the comments. If you watch this show, all 3 episodes, let me know down below in the comments. If you have ideas on who A is, let's talk about it down in the comments. Guys, most importantly, get in the comments. And after you get in the comments, if you like the video, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video out and about, and I will see you guys next week, because I think we're getting a new episode on August 4th. So until then, toodles.